Hey everybody, welcome to Paranormal Zone TV. I want to thank you all so much for being here tonight. And I have a really special guest with us tonight. His name is Bill Tortorella. And he has had a near-death experience that he's going to share with us. It's an amazing story. And it's from his book. That you can buy on Amazon, The Ninth Level of Enlightenment, The Wisdom of the Light. And so let's welcome Bill to the show. Hey, Bill. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you tonight?
Oh, fine. How are you?
I'm just awesome.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us tonight. You're a
Thank you.
really special guest for us. We've never had a guest that had a near-death experience, and it's an amazing story. I've watched your videos on YouTube, and I was really happy that you decided to come on our show and share your amazing story. But before you share your story with our with our viewers, would you please tell us about your life before your near-death experience?
Well, I'm originally born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, born in 1952. My mom and dad, my mom owned a bar and grill across the street from where Ebbets Field was, where the Brooklyn Dodgers used to play. And my dad was president of a Teamsters Union, Local 804, that was United Parcel. So I was growing up, I had quite an exciting life. The ball players were at my mom's bar. She used to be the big cook of the neighborhood. So I remember Leo DeRocha, well, my mom relates all these stories to me. He comes in one day and brings a young man named Sandy Koufax.
Oh.
And he's only 16 years old. So he says to my mom, Olga, he could only have a Coca-Cola with his sandwich this afternoon for lunch. And my mom says, what's your name, young man? My name's Sandy Koufax. I'm going to be a great ball player one day. Yeah, I have a whole bunch of great memories of that. I was really very, very young at that time because I was born in 52. I think they went out to LA in 58. And then I graduated, after I graduated high school in New York, I graduated from the School of Art and Design. And I was a commercial artist. And then decided to move to Miami in 1973. The move made a very big change for me because I thought my life was going to be in art and be an artist my whole life. Well, I got down to Miami and there was actually no advertising agencies at the time. Don't forget, it was 1973 Miami. I thought in my head, we didn't have computers that day to do all this studying we could do today. I thought Miami was a big city, but it was actually a small city. Miami Beach was very big, with all the big hotels and everything. So I had to look hard. Fortunately, my first wife, God rest her soul, she got a job right away as a legal secretary. But in my field, there was nothing in Miami. And I went to the Miami Herald art department. I'll never forget this in my life. And I said, what do you have to do to get a job in art down in Miami? He says, well, if you want to be in this here business, you got to go to New York and Chicago. And I just left New York. So I said, I didn't want to go home. I actually became a paramedic. I became a paramedic for Dade County. So worked with the county ambulance. And it was, it was a wonderful experience. It gave me a real life experience that. So fast forward, moving now, I get in my own business about 10 years after being a paramedic. I got into my own business and I wound up doing trade shows all over the country. I did about 45 trade shows a year. And I'm going to bring it right now to Tucson. The year is 1994 now. I'm 42 years old. And we do this big gem and mineral show out there every single February. That's one of the jewelry shows that I do. I'm in the jewelry business at this time. And every year, the February show, people from all over the world come there because they come there to buy their stones and everything. But there's jewelry dealers like myself set up as well as, just loose, rough cut stones. But it's cold and flu season in February. And people from all over the world are there. I'm talking all over the world: Europe, Asia, Africa, South America, Canada. People come by. Well, there's millions of people over a course of 2 weeks. It's a very, very long show, and it's a course of 2 weeks. The first day of the show, I could see there was a lot of coughing going on, people walking around, they were sick. By the third day of the show, the lady across from me must have caught something into the show, maybe 3 days in, and she happens to just drop to the floor. So my old paramedic skills jumped in, and I hopped out of my booth, ran over to hers to make sure she was all right. I just wanted to make sure she could breathe well, and she had an open airway until the paramedics got there. Well, I picked her head up and put it in my lap, and she was on fire. So she had such a high fever. The paramedics came and took her off that day. I was fine. It was that evening I came down with something. And I've had flus, I've had colds in my life, but this time the local authorities, they couldn't identify this. They didn't know if it was bacterial or they didn't know if it was viral. They didn't know what it was. So they were treating it as a combination because they said it could have been bacterial. So what happened was I get sick and have a high fever that first night. I wake up and go to the show the next morning, take a shower, try to get there. I get into the show. My people I had working for me take one look at me and they say, "Hey, Bill, you got to get yourself to the hospital. You don't look good." By the time I got on the show, I was drenched. I was just sweating up a storm, and it was terrible. So I went to the hospital. I'll never forget this. The hospital emergency room was filled with people. They asked after a while. We were all just standing there. They asked if people wouldn't mind going to different medical centers around town. So I said, I'll be glad to go because I knew, number one, I could probably get seen quicker. So I went to this medical center and they took one look at me, threw me on a gurney, and threw an IV right in my arm. They said I was completely dehydrated. My oxygen levels were horrible. My throat felt like it was this far out. I could barely get air in while I was awake. And it was scary because I was having a hard time breathing. So they hooked me up with the oxygen, but now they're pumping antibiotics in my IV bags on the terminal. So I must have been there much pretty part of the whole, well, until, medical centers close. They have a certain time. They're not like a hospital where they stay overnight. And they closed. And by this time, I must have 3 bags of IV in me, or 4 bags. I don't remember that. They said, "Listen, we got your fluids back up. Your fever came down a little bit." I had a fever at this time. My throat was terrible. I was racked in pain. And they said, "We're going to give you an inhaler. We're going to give you some more antibiotics." And they wanted me to start taking that about at midnight if I was still awake. So they said they want me to go back to my hotel room. And they told me if I feel like this in the morning, they said, "Get yourself back into the hospital because then we know it's really bad." At that time, when I left there, they had me feeling better because they filled me all up with fluids. They brought my fever down a little bit, and I wasn't feeling too bad. That night, I took the inhaler they gave me a couple of times, and then I waited to take I took the antibiotic probably about, I don't know, 11:45, quarter to 12. And then by that time I was exhausted. I just conked out. And that night turned into a night of light and love. It was one of the most beautiful experiences I've ever had. I'm about to tell you one of the
Oh,
most
okay.
profound.
Let me change the screen now, okay? You're going to tell
Okay,
us your
sure.
story now? Okay, let me change the
Yeah.
screen. Okay. All right, now go ahead.
Well, I'm about to tell you one of the most profound near-death experiences you might have ever heard. As I fell off, I remember physically how I left my body. I remember leaving my body, and I left my body. You know, they say the eyes are the window of the soul. I left my body through my eyes in this magnificent, magnificent glowing green mist. It was the only way I could explain the color. It was like the color of a fern in spring, magnified hundreds and hundreds of times. It was a beautiful, glowing, magnificent color. And now I'm fully part of this mist, hovering over myself, looking down upon my body. And I remember my body at this time as it being me. So I'm looking at myself, not realizing in my mind yet that I'm dead. But when I finally said, and I remember saying this out loud, that body is not alive. As soon as I said that, a beam of light came from behind and lit up everything. It lit up underneath me. I didn't see my body no longer. It turned me, and this beautiful gateway opens. And I didn't move. It drew me right in. And then it brought me into this magnificent tunnel of beautiful colors, of light. And by this time, I'm already feeling a feeling like I've never had before. I'm feeling love. It's almost impossible to explain this love that I'm feeling. This feeling is so powerful and strong. It's nothing like the love that we experience here. And now I start to move. So now I'm physically moving through this tunnel, completely aware of everything that's going on. And I'm moving faster and faster, and these beautiful colors are going by me and through me. And I'm feeling nothing but love and protected. I'm feeling actually cradled. I feel like there's someone with me, but I'm by myself, physically moving at the speed of light. That's how it feels. So as I move faster and faster, the love is getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And now I reach my destination, which I will call heaven, because I believe in God. And I'll never forget my arrival. I said, I'm home. I'm finally home. Now I remember distinctly saying this out loud. I'm home. I'm finally home. And now this is the first time I hear another voice. Yes, Bill, you're home in the light of God. A soft, beautiful voice comes in and says that to me. I had no idea. I thought I was alone coming through the tunnel. She explained who she was, that she was one of my guardians, and her name was Antonia. I'm one of your guardians. She actually said one of your 3 guardians, and I'm responsible for bringing you back. And I was just flabbergasted. Now at this time, I'm feeling friends and family all around me. I'm being greeted by nothing but love, and we're all interconnected. The love is so strong, we could understand each other. Everything is done with telepathy. There's no mouths at this time. There's no bodies at this time. Everyone is a spirit, a glowing, beautiful spirit, still individual, but one at the same time. Now, that's pretty hard to understand while we're here. But you could physically, I say we use maybe 8%, 6%, 7%. That's what they say we use of our own minds here on this plane that we are on Earth. I think when we're over the other side, when we're in heaven, I think we have the abilities of using next to 100% of our mind, because we're one with everything and everyone. And it's magnificent. And then Antonia says, your second guardian is coming. And I see this beautiful beam of light approaching me. And I hear these words come out of his mouth. He says, hello, Billy. And this was my brother Peter's voice. My brother's voice I know better than anything in the world, because my brother was there. He was the one that basically brought me up, because my dad was always away working, or he was just busy all the time. And he traveled a lot. But the key fact is, I know Peter's voice. He says, "Yes, Billy." And that embrace was so beautiful. It was like he was there with me, but we were together in a different plane. We were in heaven together. And it was beautiful feeling, a magnificent feeling. And then he made a comment. We have to go for your life review. At this time in my life, I had no idea what a life review was. I mean, now that I know physically, I know hundreds and hundreds of near-death experienced people from around the world. At that time, it was, I had no idea what a near-death experience was. I never heard of it in my life. And now he's bringing me to a different plane, different area, beautiful area, all illuminated. And now they start showing me my life. Now, this is the first time I recognize myself in my body again, because they're actually showing me my life in the physical. I'm not a physical body, I'm still spirit, but I see myself in the physical. I see Peter in the physical. And Peter looks younger than I did. Well, my brother Peter had passed when I was only 15 years old. He passed away from a cancer. So he was very young when he passed. He was only 30. He was 15 years older than me, and he basically brought me up, like I said before. But they start to show me, and it's magnificent because they're showing me my life from when I was a young boy. They're showing me things I've done with my friends, and now they're showing me good things. So it's wonderful. I mean, they're showing me fun times. I remember them. I remember my mom giving me some money, and every time she gave me some money, what I did is I would take my friends out to the movies. I'd buy the popcorn and sodas, and a lot of them didn't have it, so I would go ahead and do that. And nobody took advantage. Everybody helped each other out in my neighborhood in one way or the other. And that part was wonderful. And then it takes me to a time of my life when I was a paramedic. It took me all through high school and all that. But the important things, it takes me to a time when I was a paramedic. And I'll never forget this because we were stationed downtown Miami, and our physical station was in North Miami Beach. And we were on the way, my partner and I was on the way up to our station. And they were actually showing, I'm seeing this just like I'm physically there again. I'm in my unit with my partner, and all of a sudden, we're on I-95 heading north, and we get a call, comes over the radio. It says it's a 317, and that means an emergency car accident or some kind of physical car, truck, motorcycle accident. But it means it's an emergency, that's something very bad. So we're already on I-95 and 95th Street, I believe, when the call comes over. By the time I finish up with the call, we're at about 120th Street, and we're less than a mile away. So our ETA is less than a minute. They already had a unit called over, but they were going to be about 10 to 15-minute drive. So I called them off by calling the dispatcher, and telling him that we'll take the call. My partner, Danny, gets to the scene. I'll never forget this because I could see it like it's yesterday. We get to the scene, and there's a young man running around, he's running frantically. And I pick up the bag right away. I see a pickup truck. There's a man in the pickup truck. They had a little Chevy Nova. They must have plowed into the back of the Chevy Nova. And I hop out. I have the medic bag in my hand. My partner hops out. We're running towards him because we think something's wrong with him. And he's yelling, my sister, my sister. And he goes like this. And we both turn, Danny and I, and we look, and his sister's head is through the windshield of the car. I mean, it was bad. It was terrible. And whenever there's head trauma, there's a lot of bleeding that comes with that. So Danny and I run over immediately. We have to assess right away. We don't have too much time here. So we have to decide whether we're going to wait for the fire truck to come with the cutters or try to get her off and get her to the hospital. We both look at each other in about 5 seconds and say, we have to get her off. She'll just bleed out. So I went outside. Danny went inside the car, and I handed the top part of her head into him so he could put her, he was holding her when I got to her. Then we picked her and put her up on the stretcher. Now she was out cold, but she was still breathing. I am trying to put a gauze bandage on her head after we get her in the unit. I just had a whole bunch of bandages in my hand holding the top part of her head back down. And now got her in the gurney. Danny takes off. The brother's in the back of the ambulance with me, and she starts to seize. Her whole body is literally jumping off the stretcher. It's jumping up and down. I have one hand under her neck. I have the other hand on top of her head because she wouldn't hold the bandage. But she's still out cold. She's having a seizure. So she doesn't even realize what's going on now. And now I scream out, God help me. I remember screaming. I was actually screaming to the brother to sit on her legs. I wanted him to hold her legs down so, I could get some kind of control over it. Thank God we was only minutes away from Parkway General Hospital. When I yelled out, God help me, I physically saw Peter's hand come in with mine on top of her head. And now we get to the hospital. The doors go flying open in the back. I didn't even open the doors. They were all there waiting for us. They had everyone there. The anesthesiologist was even outside waiting. They put her on the gurney. They run her off into the operating room. Danny and I look at each other. We got a whole 24-hour shift ahead of us. We take off for our station. Go back and change. Now, all I could do is think about this young girl the whole day long. And Danny and the other guys at the station says, Bill, stop taking your work home with you. And Danny says, Bill, she's not alive. I just ignored him. I didn't want to hear that. We went through the whole day. We did calls that whole day, that whole night. The next morning, about an hour before we were supposed to go back to the main station to bring our unit back, I woke Danny up early. I said, Danny, we've got to go to Parkway. I want to see what happened to this young girl. He said, Billy, he says, she's dead. She's dead, Billy. I said, Danny, I got to go back. Now, I've never done this. I was a paramedic for years already. I've never asked to go back and see anybody. I looked at Danny and said, you have to do this for me. He said, okay, let's go. He said, we have time. I said, I woke you up an hour early on purpose. We hopped in the unit, went to Parkway General. One of the nurses, we know a lot of the nurses in the ERs because we're there every shift we're on. And I think the nurse was Becky. And I said to her, what happened to that young lady we brought in yesterday morning? And she looked at me and she says, do you want to meet her? Just like that. The chills, the hair on my arm still stands up to today when I tell that story because it's so emotional to me. So she brings us up to the room she's in. The girl is sitting up in bed, eating Jell-O with a big turban on top of her head, bandage, and she's got none of her face only has little minor scratches on it. So I looked at her right away, and the first thing I said, oh, thank God her face didn't get, destroyed in this. But I couldn't understand because the window was in her skull. Me and Danny thought the window was through her skull. This girl was so lucky. What happened was, everybody's heard of people getting scalped. So what happened was when the windshield cut into it, just scalped up the cranium, and it never broke her skull. So she happened to be the luckiest girl in the world. And I was so happy. And her brother now wakes up. He's sleeping in the corner. Her brother jumps out of the chair and he says, this is the man that saved your life. And the feeling was unbelievable. I can never forget that. Never forget that. So after that, just these are the good things that show in my life review, the good things, because I did on that job we did things every day where we just had people's lives in our hands and we were trying to do the best we can to save them. Brought quite a few people back from the dead that was having in CPR. There's times I brought people back that were dead for 30 minutes through the use of CPR. So I just want to let everybody know CPR is an important thing. Everybody should learn it. Okay, that's very important. But now they switch me over to the dark side, I call it, the bad that I've done in my life. And now this is not so, well, the feeling is not very good at all. They show you all the wrong that you've done. And you actually get to feel the wrong you've done. So they're showing me things I've done when I was a teenager. You know how people, but teenagers, I don't feel like I've ever done it. Thank God. Well, I don't feel like I've never done anything really, really, really bad. But I've done things to hurt people and not physically hurt them, mostly emotionally. But you get to feel that, what you do to people on the other side in your life review. And it brought me to this one part of my life when my first wife and I decided I wanted to separate, get a divorce. We had a 2-year-old son. And I call myself, those were the young and dumb days of my life. I didn't realize the pain that I put. But now, in the life review, you physically become the pain. The pain is so, so strong. You become part of that pain. I remember literally screaming, please forgive me. Dear God, please forgive me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I had no idea how much pain I caused. I'm sorry. And after that, this grade dropped and we were back in spirit form again. But you feel all the good in your life review, but you feel the bad as well that you've done. And I don't know if I believe in a hell, but I know there's heaven. I know there's a life review. And if there is a hell, that might be part of it. Because it was tough. That feeling was emotional. I actually felt the emotional to the point where I felt almost physical pain from the emotional side. It was so bad. So now the life review is finished. Now we're back in physical spirit. And Antonia and Peter's standing there, and Antonia says to me, I'll never forget this. She says, look at yourself, Bill. So remember I told you I was this floating mist, this beautiful green glowing mist? Well, now I look like them. I'm a beautiful beam of light, a pure beam. It's magnificent. I'm just complete energy, a ball of energy of love. And it was the most beautiful feeling I've ever had. So I always say to myself, kidding around, that life review must have went okay. I think I was able to see all this because of all the things I did while I was paramedic, all those years of doing that type of work and trying for serving people and helping and, doing the best I could. Peter announces your third guardian is coming. Now, I see this magnificent, I'm feeling nothing but knowledge and wisdom. And I know this guardian before he even gets to me. And Peter says, Oren. And he introduces himself to me. And I basically, in my mind, said, I didn't have to say it to him out loud. I said, I know Oren. Oren's been with me my whole life. He's been my intuition. You know how they say you have an angel sitting on one shoulder? Sometimes they use that expression. Well, Oren was my angel of intuition. So I believe we have angels around us all through our lifetime. And I know we do because my book, talks nothing only about things that were miracles that happened to me prior to my near-death experience. I mean, at one time, I was physically on a business trip and a vacation trip at the same time in Bangkok, Thailand. And we were physically kidnapped and taken. And there was no way in the world that I should have gotten out of that alive. No way. Because they were there to basically, I guess, rob us and, and just get rid of us. That's what I found out was going to happen, but it didn't. Something interfered with that. Now, all that stuff is in the front part of my book. And it's so exciting to read those parts, but it's not part of the near-death experience. These are things that actually happened to me along the way. And there was quite a few things that happened to me along the way up into the near-death experience that makes the story complete, because it shows you how our angels step in and help you when you're on this side. So it's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Oren says to me, we're going up one more level. And we get whisked off again. And now we're in this beautiful, magnificent crystal. It felt like a crystal theater. It was beautiful. But the crystals were reflecting the universe. It was so magnificently beautiful. You could see combustion, stars, nebulas. It was magnificent. And there was crystal all around. And now they start showing me. Now, there's 2 times in the near-death experience where I got to see myself in body form. One was in my life review, and the second time was now. And these are the only 2. Now, you'll hear the term Akasha Records a lot from people that's had near-death experiences. I didn't know anything about any term Akasha Records. In my book, I call it the Hall of Events. Now they start showing me, it's almost like a flickering screen traveling at speed so quick, like a computer, like traveling at a computer, but then stopping at an event. Now they're showing me not necessarily my life, but they're showing me a combination of my life and all the events that's happened in the world, all the major events that's happened during my life. But it started out quite funny because it started out in wars that I haven't been in. I mean, it must have been World War II or Korea where they started showing me out. Now, I don't know, or have I been in those wars? I don't know. I mean, I believe in incarnation. So at the same time, I believe in Jesus too. So, I mean, there's a little discrepancy there, but I do believe that we get incarnated and we're here over and over and over again to increase the volume of our souls. And what we do is we learn through a process of choices that we make during our life. As we make the right choices and stay on the right path, our souls get stronger and stronger and stronger. So our spirits grow, basically. Now they're showing me events. They take me up to my birth. I physically see my birth in 1952. I see my birth happening. They take me past that. I'll never forget. And it's moving fast now. It's moving fast. It's flickering fast. And now it stops. And it's 1963. And I'll never forget, I'm sitting in my classroom at school. And in those days, we had speakers on the wall. You'll remember them, right? Where the principal would talk to you over the speaker in the classroom. Well, we all had speakers in the rooms in my schools growing up. And the principal got over the speaker in the room, and this was 1963, and he announced that JFK was just shot. John F. Kennedy, our president. So it was a very somber moment for everyone. And this part, I'm witnessing everything. I remember walking home. I remember getting home that day. They released us all early. They released us almost immediately that day from school. And I think it was about 12:01 in the afternoon. I got home, and my mother and Christine, the lady that worked for us, this is a lady that actually brought me up since I was a child. She helped my mom because my mom was at the bar early because she had to have lunch ready. She did all the cooking in the morning. So she had to have the lunches ready, and she was the cook, and Christine, and they were both singers, my mom and Christine. My mom used to sing with Tommy Dorsey Band, and well, she did it a couple of times. Then she got nervous, which she never should have got. But that's a true story. Christine sounded like if you saw the movie The Lady Sings the Blues with Diana Ross, you would know her voice. And it was just amazing. There was singing going on in my house all the time. But today there was crying at the table. And, I just came home and joined in. And now it's taken me again. Now it's moving. And it's moving, and it's showing me event after event after event. It shows me Martin Luther King. It shows me Bobby. It shows me the end where it stops. It physically stops, the end of the Vietnam War. And we're physically sitting on top of the building where the helicopter comes down and is picking up the last people, taking them out of Vietnam. Right after that, we start moving again fast. Now, this is amazing because it's physically stopping at the scene, and then we're part of the scene. So it's hard to comprehend, but it's exactly the way it happens. We stop now. I see my physical near-death experience. We stop for a moment, but physically past that. And now we're moving again faster and faster. And I believe the next stop is 9/11. And we stopped in front of the Twin Towers. And you have to understand now, I'm from New York. I have friends working in those buildings. I'm frantic when I think it was the Twin Towers. I really know it was the Twin Towers now. But then I thought it was the Twin Towers. And I said to my guardians, I said, my friends. And I start running, and they held my arm. I'll never forget. Don't forget, because now in these spots, we're in the physical. So it looks like we're physical, even though we're spirit. You can physically feel them holding your arm. They hold my arm and they say, Bill, you can't do anything. He says, we're not here. She said, you're not here yet. And I didn't comprehend that at all. I didn't know what was going on. I thought that was the present. And now I recognize it as 9/11. So after 9/11, right before it leaves that part, it was nothing but black smoke all around us. And I remember after I stopped running when they stopped me, and Oren says to me, Bill, he says to me, what do you see? And I could see that people can't see anything. They're just running frantically in a dark cloud of smoke. He says, what do you see? I turn around to Oren. I says, Oren, I see everything. We could see physically everything, like there was no smoke, but we could actually see the smoke at the same time, but actually see through it. It was magnificent. They said, Bill, this is your future. And that's when that part ended. And then we went on again. And then the next stop, next event, Baghdad. I'll never forget this because bombs were going off. We're in the city of Baghdad when it's being bombed. And the reason why I believe 100% it was Baghdad was due to the way the people's dress, with the way they were dressed, and frantically running again, people all over, just hysterical. Now we're moving to the final time, and I believe it takes me to the time we're in now. This time, this day and age is so important because we're in an ascension period time frame. in our history, these ascension period timeframes only happen once every couple 100 years. And it's an important time. Over the next 20 years of our existence here on Earth, it's going to be a very, very important time. But they showed me things. They showed me plains of plateaus. There was plains on levels. It almost looked like floors of different situations of outcomes. They directed me only to two. They directed me to an outcome. The first outcome they directed me to and showed me, if you remember the movie Mad Max with Mel Gibson and how devastating that was, where people get to the point where they basically live, kill off each other for a bottle of water. I mean, that's how bad this scene physically was. Then it takes me to the exact opposite scene of utopia. And this utopia was so magnificent, where people live together, they work in harmony. There's service being done, there's kindness being done. People are kind, people are forgiving. There's no unforgiveness anymore. People forgive one another. It's a beautiful, beautiful utopian reality. So this is what I'm shown. Now, there was a bunch of planes in between, but these are the two that stood out to me where I was physically brought to. I believe this means we have to make a choice, and our choices have to be soon, because it's a very, very times are changing. You know, it's like the old rock and roll songs. You know, these times are changing, and there's things that we have to do to make it right. First of all, you have to start listening to one another around the world, because the whole world is in an uproar. It's not just the U.S. So this is important that we all get it together. But the key facts are these. I know where we're going. We're not going to Mad Max. We're going to be on a higher ascension plane, and we're physically in that ascension period time frame right now. And we're going to a wonderful, beautiful place, a utopia on Earth, I believe. Things have to be done, yes, along the way, but I believe the outcome will be good and fine. So I have great faith in that. I have great faith that that will happen. Now, this is the final part. They take me to a place of beauty. I'm in gorgeous cloud area with beautiful clouds all around us, with these beautiful angels. Now, our spirits are all beautiful color, brilliant color. And now we're in front of these panels of white angels. They're pure white, because white is every color in the spectrum. And these angels are so magnificent. They have such wisdom and such knowledge. And they start pouring this knowledge into me. My book is called The Ninth Level of Enlightenment, The Wisdom of the Light. They present and give and teach me 9 principles of enlightenment that could put us on this path to utopia. It's a wonderful path, and it could be a beautiful outcome and a beautiful place to live if these simplistic principles are followed. Now, I can't go over all of them because they're in great detail, but there's important ones like choices that we make. The first principle is the same principle in the 10 Commandments. You can't take a life. You mustn't take a life of someone else. There's a reason for this. The reason is not what we think. We think on here a justification, a life for a life. But when you take another life, you could be just sending someone back for a rebirth. The reason why we don't take other people's lives, of course, it's the wrong thing to do. But the reasoning is we don't know what that person's great-grandchild might have done. That person's great-grandchild might have made the cure, the real cure for cancer. So we can't change their life path. We're not allowed to interfere with one another's life paths, and neither are they allowed to interfere with yours. So you have you're able completely to self-defend yourself, 100%. So self-defense is a must because they don't have the right to take your life path away either. No one has that. But choices, I explained that as we went along. It's so important that we stay on the right path. That's how we get judged. We evolve from a sequence of choices that we make through our whole lifetime. And every time we're on the right path and make the right choice, and everything works in a row now. You're going to see how this comes together. When we stay on the right path and the right choice, things usually do come out fine for us. And a lot of times for everybody around us. Our spirits are actually growing during this time frame. Now, we make a lot of those choices because of another principle, our intuition. We have to pay close attention to our intuition. Now, our intuition doesn't mean the way someone looks or the way someone acts or just a feeling you have. And intuition is a strong feeling that something or someone, which is one of your guides, telling you over and over and over, this is the wrong thing to do. If you have an intuition like that, you stop whatever you're doing and reassess it. From there, it goes into service. Now, service covers a lot of things. I mean, beyond service, there's kindness, there's respect for one another. The biggest one is forgiveness. We have to learn how to forgive in our hearts. Once we learn the forgiveness in our hearts, we become whole. Our spirit comes whole. Our spirits grow. Now, after the 9 principles, they're finished with their teachings to me. One of the angels steps forward and literally steps right up to me in my spirit, and he's showing me a number sequence with flowing numbers floating down, crystal numbers lighting, numbers and symbols. The beauty of these numbers are the ones that would light was the 8s. The number 8 and 1 is very important. The one they explained to me represents God. 8 represents eternity. So 8 and 1 is God for eternity, making the number 9. The 3s, the 6s, the 9s. Well, in the universe, it's actually 963. If we understand the sequence of these numbers, we'll understand how things remain right on this earth. Because without those numbers, we wouldn't have our tides on our earth here, and we wouldn't have our seasons. Our earth would cease to exist. They explained to me the earth, Mother Earth, and how important she was in not only our life, but the world's life. And the earth has a spirit as well. When that earth spirit is at a non-balanced level, there's a lot of problems that occur in the earth. Like sometimes you see hundreds of tornadoes at one time. This is a negative imbalance it comes from. a much higher negative imbalance. They told me my life path number. He told me. He told me my life path number was 3. I had no idea, again, what a life path number was, what an NDE was. But he told me that number stuck with me, that number 3. He told me my life path number was 3. I found out later on there's a way of figuring out your life path number. And I investigated the 3, and it did turn up 3, my life path number. They told me they had an alert. Now, I knew this number my whole life. My alert numbers was 66. That number 66 was so strong in my life already because I've had events that popped up all through my life with the number 66 showing up to me. Sometimes in one day, it would show up 10, 15 times. I'd look at a sign that said exit 66. I look down at my watch, it says 6 past 6. I look at the speedometer, I'm going exactly 66 in the car. These numbers are alert signal numbers. They're life path numbers. The importance of these numbers are, well, it's believe it or not, numbers and music control our world and our universe around it. So that part is very, very important. Now, the final part, a beautiful, sweet spirit approaches me. And she says to me, you have the 9 principles of enlightenment. I said, yes. Do you understand the 9 principles of enlightenment? I said, yes. She said, you must return. I did everything you could possibly think of. I know I don't want to return. I'm part of the light now. I'm love. I was basically fighting. I was fighting. I didn't want to return. I didn't want to come back here. I did everything I possibly could not to come back. She says, you must return. You must return. My wife was at home during this show. She usually did the show with me every year there, but she was pregnant with my son, Billy, at the time. And I believe that she was sending me back because of the pregnancy. But something else occurred. She says to me the 3rd time, Dad, you must return. The next thing you know, I'm being pulled back. I'm being pulled back through not quite as comfortable as going. I'm being pulled back through the universe, like I'm feeling almost like a rag doll, being pulled back and then zapped back in my body. I'm back in my body now. And all I could do, I didn't have no air in my body. Don't forget, I have no idea how long. But I took that first breath and it was like I was underwater for 15 minutes. Now, they say the mind is dead after 6 minutes. That is not true. There's so many of us out there that's been out. There's so many documented cases out there that's been out 45 minutes, an hour and 15 minutes. And they've come back to life and their mind was fully capable of doing everything. My throat was the only thing that moved in my body when I took that breath in. My arms didn't move. My legs was dead. I felt nothing but complete nothing in my body but numbness. As I sat there and breathed, all I could do was think about that life on the other side and how wonderful it was. And say to myself, why am I here? Well, at the time I started thinking my wife is pregnant. I'm here for a reason. Okay, this is important. This is years later now. Years later, in the year 2000, in the 6th month, on the 6th day, my daughter, Rihanna, was born. She was born in June, the 6th month, and the 6th day of 2000, with all zeros in front of it. So there was no in-between numbers. She was 6 of 6. And she said that to me on the way out. I am 6 of 6. And that is what happened on the near-death experience. I started getting the tingles in my hands and my feet and my arms, and I reached over to the phone and picked it up, and I said, get me the hospital. And the next thing I know, I open my eyes, I'm in the hospital. This is over in Tucson. But there's one very important thing that happened. After I got back home, I made an appointment with my doctor immediately. Well, it was as fast as I could get in, because I told him I just needed a checkup. So by this time, I'm better from whatever it was, flu, bacterial, whatever it was that killed me. I'm better. He said, why are you here? Well, I'm just here for my checkup. So he does the whole checkup in the room, the blood pressure. He takes blood to test and all that. In those days, it took days to get your blood test back. I said to him, finally, I got enough nerve to say, I said, Dr. Vasquez, I have to talk to you. And he says to me, well, is it personal or is it physical? I says, well, it's both. He says, well, let's go to my office. Went to his office, and I'm sitting there for a moment looking at his plaques. He said, let me just finish up something. I was his last guest of the day, last patient of the day. And he says to me, what's wrong? And I laid out the whole story to him, just like I laid out to you. And he let me talk. And then when I finished, he just sat there in silence for about, I would say, a full minute. Now, that feels like a long time when you're waiting for an answer. A full minute of silence. And he says to me, the first thing out of his mouth, he says, Bill, I want you to sit back and relax. I'm going to tell you something that I think happened. He says, what I think you had was a near-death experience. He said, you just told me the same exact story that 7 of his patients told him. The patients that died in the hospital did not have such a full story because, they get defibrillated immediately and they come back. So a lot of patients just get to the hovering stage and they feel that love. They never get to go through the gateway in the tunnel sometimes. A lot of NDEers. He says, but I got the same exact story. He said, Bill, from 3 of my patients, even the point where they said they're finally home. He said, Bill, they said the same words you said. And then he says, Bill, I have to do one more test on you. So he brings me back into the examination room, whips out the machinery. Now he's got the electrical cardiogram out and some kind of other machine hooked up to me. And he's got paper coming out from every direction on these machines. And it's the old days where they're reading the tape. This is 1994. They're reading the tape. He's reading the tape. He's reading the tape. He's looked at me. He said, Bill, when did you have your heart attack? I said, Dr. Vasquez, I said, you know I never had a heart attack. You've been my doctor since I was a paramedic 20 years ago. And he says, yeah, I know. He said, you had a near-death experience. And that's the story.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah,
Oh,
well,
man.
that's exactly what happened.
And these 3 patients had the same story. But I mean, okay,
3 patients had the same story. 3
okay.
patients went through the gateway. They went through the tunnel. They said, I'm home. I'm finally home. They had a life review. They called theirs Akasha Records because I guess they knew what Akasha Records was. I did not know.
Oh my God.
I did not have any idea what Akasha Records meant, but I call in my book, I call it the Hall of Events, because even when I wrote the book, I wrote this book now. I wrote this book, and my book explains stuff about the things that are happening today with the AI. 20 something years ago is when I wrote my first book. I talk about the AI, not in those words, but I talk about the advancement of technology and taking away jobs and things like that.
Okay, so I want to ask you in your life review, Um, when you came back from your near-death experience and you were returned back into your body, in your life, did you make any changes uh, to in your life, maybe physical, psychological, or spiritual levels? And
Psychological, 100%. Yes. One other thing you were saying?
um, so, did you make a shift in your ideas of how you felt about life at that time? About life now?
Oh, it was 100% turn around for me because for me, don't forget, I was just a business person. I had business on my mind all the time. I was coming home from that show. I had an appointment. I was supposed to go to QVC, and because I used to sell some things on QVC sometimes, and I never even had those thoughts in my mind prior to that. I mean,
We,
I was born and raised Roman Catholic. I believed in. I didn't go to church all the time. I went to church once in a while, but it was a complete change for me. I mean, I would do anything now. When I was 68 years old, just a couple of years ago, we were in a water park here in Orlando, and a guy starts having a seizure, and I just had my knees replaced, and I was just recuperating from that, and I hopped out of my seat. My wife says, "Where are you going?" I says, "Well, he's having a seizure. I got to take care of him." He was banging his head, and I felt
oh,
bad because no one was doing nothing for the man. And all these young people were around, they weren't doing a darn thing. And so I got underneath him. I picked his head up, I put it in my lap, because the first thing you want to do is make them secure that they don't hit their skull. So then I took a little wedge of a corner of a towel and just put it in between the back of his teeth so he wouldn't bite his tongue off, because he was starting to bite his tongue off.
oh,
So I held him till he came out of his seizure. And, of course, when people come out of the seizure, they don't realize a lot of times they had a seizure. He looks at me and he says, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm just a friend."
um, when now sometimes when people have a near-death experience, they'll revert to a younger age. Were you still the same age when you were going through this near-death experience?
Well, this is what everybody says. In our spirit life, in our spirit side, we are light and pure energy. We are nothing but love. We come here to physically learn because we learn on this plane. This is where we feel pain, sorrow, those physical and emotional things. On the other side, the only thing you have is love, service, kindness. That's it. But that love, service, kindness on the other side overwhelms this side 10,000%. It's so magnificently beautiful on that side. So people ask me, there's a question you might have. Are you afraid of death now?
Oh, yes. I
My
was going to ask you that.
Well, my fear of death, I did have a fear of death prior to that.
Okay.
I have absolutely no fear of death whatsoever. None.
And that was one of my questions, and you,
Because I know I'm going home. You know,
yeah.
this is not our home. This is just a reality that we live in. This is not our home. Our home is on the other side. And you'll recognize it as home someday, and everybody will. I mean, because that's where we actually go. We go home. And
Yeah.
that's why not only me, but now that I've been introduced to literally thousands of near-death NDEs around the world.
Oh, you
I have
have.
millions and millions and millions of people on my podcast.
My God. I was
And I
going to
just
ask you
finished a
that.
movie.
I was going to ask you
I
that question too. You're might as well. Did you read my notes?
Not all of them, because I get hundreds and emails a day. I just finished a documentary movie, and that'll be out in December. It's called What Every Soul Knows.
Oh, and where's that going to be shown?
Well, they're going to have the premiere, well, next month at the IONS convention. the Near Death Institute convention they have once a year. They
Oh
have it in
yeah.
different areas in the country. This year it's in Phoenix, Arizona. They're going to have a short preview of the. They're not going to show the whole film because it's almost 2.5 hours long. They have like 40 some odd people in it.
Wow.
So there's not only near death experience people. There's scientists. There's psychics in it. There's people that have a lot of knowledge in this field in this documentary, and it's going to be a great documentary. I just did a second part for the movie.
Wow.
Just a couple of weeks ago, I had to go up north to film at the studio and finalize it up because apparently, they like my story. Well, he said I'm only picking 3 out to do their story part, so we got to do a big part of the movie.
Wow, that's awesome. You know, I also read that some, I don't know how many there are because they didn't give me statistics, but there are NDEs that have had um, one, besides one, they've had several, maybe two or
Oh,
three. Did you
oh
ever have
yes.
another one?
Well, I'll tell you exactly what happened to me just 2 years ago. I had a kidney stone operation, and I was in the hospital from Saturday with the kidney stones. No, Friday night, excuse me. And they didn't get me into the operating room to Monday night at 12 o'clock in the evening. But that whole Monday, they didn't. What happened was I was supposed to be in the operating room at 8:30 for my operation in the morning. So I was down there at 7. You know how they prep you and everything, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm down there at 7, and time goes by, they don't even come in to prep me. Next thing I know, it's the afternoon. Next thing I know, it's the evening. Next thing I know, it's 11 o'clock at night already. And I haven't eaten anything from the night before at 6. And I do have hypoglycemia.
Oh,
So what happened was right before they started to prep me at about quarter to 12, because they were finally bringing me in at midnight, she shot some, I don't know, some kind of drug in my arm. I think it was just supposed to relax me or something. But all of a sudden, now you're going to hear this from a lot of NDEers, the in between. Well, I call it the in between. They call it the veil.
oh,
All right. So all of a sudden, I hear her very faintly. I hear her screaming. She's screaming at the top of her lungs, but all I hear is a faint, faint sound from her. He's going, he's going, he's going, doctor. That's the last thing I heard.
oh my,
Then I went out. So I was out cold, and they must have came over and did something to me to make me come back. But
oh,
I was in that in between because I know that that feeling of love, that same feeling of love came over me already. I
wow.
already had that feeling of love. So I'm already in the feeling of love while I was out. And then a second later, I was back. I never had a real NDE because I guess I still had some kind of heartbeat, at the time,
Well,
you
wait a
know?
minute. You don't have to be dead to have an NDE. You don't have to
Well,
be. There's
yeah,
different levels of
near,
NDEs.
near death experience, you have to be dead. It's the OBEs,
Yeah,
it's out of body experience. The OBEs, you don't have to have a near death experience. Most
oh, they're
people are
dead.
flatline.
Okay.
Yeah. The OBEs now is very important because the OBEs have the same, just like I just had, just like I just told you. Like I was out already feeling that love again, right?
Mhm.
But I was not dead yet. Evidently, they told me. I don't know if they defibrillated me or not because they didn't never told me that part. But I don't think my heart stopped in that one. She just said your blood pressure shot up off the roof, off the charts. That's what she told me. And then they must have put some sugar solution in my IV, to bring my physical glucose levels back up, because that's what I call the in between. And I always tell people this. I want to say one more thing to
Okay.
folks out there. It's very important. This is very important. If in their family someone is passing away and all of a sudden they see Uncle Harry
Right.
or their wife or their husband that's passed, okay?
Yeah.
People should just go with it. Do not say they're not there, because I'm telling you right now, they are there,
Right.
whether it's them or not, whether it's God just putting an angel there to make it look like them, but they're there. Someone is physically there in front of them, and I believe they are there. Okay, that's my belief, but I don't know for sure, so I can't say for 100%. But I think that people should go with the idea that they're there so they feel comfortable. They do that on purpose on the other side to make your transition easier to
Yeah.
step over.
Right.
Because when you step over, it could be a little shocky to some people. But well, not for me. My experience was just beautiful through the whole thing. But you hear a lot of people talk about vibrations. Yes, we all vibrate and everything. But in your outside world, you don't feel you're vibrating. You don't feel like you're vibrating. I mean, I could speak in those terms too, but I want people to understand how it really is, how to
Oh,
understand how it is, the feeling on the other side. And the feeling is one of love and light and knowledge and wisdom. Your knowledge and wisdom is so superior to this. Where on the other side, what happens in life, they showed me creation up there with combustion, how everything is done. It's amazing. Stars explode, they cause nebulas. Nebulas cause this magnification of dust. God illuminates that dust, those stardust. That's why they all say we all belong to stars. We're such an advanced species, this human species. We're so advanced. We're at a high level of what we are.
uh, my sister saw her cousin, her favorite cousin, in the doorway when she was dying.
And I believe her. I
Yes.
can tell you right now, I believe her,
Hey, we
because
have
they make it easy for them to transition.
I have a question from one of our viewers, Talk Ross from Scotland. He wants to know, did you receive any other gifts apart from enlightenment?
I received the 9 principles, the full 9 principles. Is about in my book. There's about 8 or 10 pages on each principle. So it's a very good book. It's called The Ninth Level of Enlightenment, The Wisdom of the Light. And remember what I said, is I don't have the time to explain the whole first part of the book. But the first part of the book is so important because it shows you how they're connected with us. The beautiful thing about how our angels that are with us our whole life are connected throughout our life. And sometimes they get us out of danger. I have some miracles that have happened to me, and it's in this story. And that's the first 49 pages of this book is extremely interesting. And, people, a lot of times they just want to hear about the near-death experience, but it's really very interesting when you find out how it affects us here while we're alive. While we're alive, we're being affected every day by the other side. We don't realize it, but we're being affected every day. And in the 9 principles, it shows you how to understand that.
Yeah, one viewer, Adam Ferrero, he is. How do you know it's really them that you're seeing? But you already said it could just be a replica of an angel. Somebody could be really an angel instead of
Right.
the
Oh no,
cousin.
I have a real answer for that question
Okay,
because I've had it many times.
all right.
You mean how do you know it's really them, your family?
Her cousin,
Was
like
that a
she knew, said it
question?
was her cousin. Yeah, how do
Yeah.
you know it's
Okay.
really
So
them?
Well, this is what happens. When we go, remember when I said up front that I was surrounded by family and friends? Don't forget, we live over and over and over and over and over again.
Reincarnation.
So when you go home, you recognize your family, yes, but you recognize your spirit family. You've been with them for ages. And it is your cousin Andy, but he might have been Susan in another lifetime. He might have been Jim in one other lifetime. But they in spirit, you recognize their you recognize their full spirit of life in them. So you recognize them as your real family when you're over there because they are your real family. It's just that you've all done it so much. We all travel in spirit. We call it spirit circles. We travel in our own spirit circle. You'll know this by the way you gravitate to people here on this plane while we're here on Earth. The people we gravitate for is usually people in our spirit circle, and it's usually people that you want to be around. Then there's some people in their own family, they don't want to be around each other, you know? So just because they're in your family, your home family, it doesn't mean that they're part of your spirit circle.
You know, okay. So
I explain that in the book too.
when I know I didn't have time to read your book. When when
It's a quick
you
read. You should get it, read it.
oh, I will. In fact, I might have you back. Listen, when you are on the other side, there were
Yes.
so it's the you so you saw lights and you saw people and all this feeling of love. Is that all it's like when you go to the other side? There's nothing more? What about music and singing and maybe seeing Elvis Presley or Frank Sinatra or somebody? Any of that?
Yeah, yeah. You know something? I'm going to make you laugh now. That's nothing. What you just said on the
Yeah.
other side overwhelms this side 1,000 times over. There's nothing like it. There's nothing as beautiful. There's nothing like that love because once you're part of God's love, you're physically part of God. And our mission here on earth is to try to be like God while we're alive. And that's where we ascend to a point where I believe we don't have to keep coming back over and over because we've advanced our spirit into an old, great spirit of knowledge and wisdom. And once you feel that, you'll understand what I mean. You cannot understand it until
No,
you
I can't.
actually
Because
experience it. I know.
I wanna
I
cook
know. I mean, I
meatballs
love
and I wanna
music. I
cook
love art.
meatballs and spaghetti. I wanna have
I love
wine
I
and
love
French bread and hell, I wanna have a big Italian dinners.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I think of
Oh,
them every day.
oh yeah.
You can see that.
Um, okay, now another question. Now, I know you're an artist and I've seen your
Yes.
paintings. When you came back from your near-death experience, did this experience enhance your painting?
Well, I started painting again after. I stopped painting for many years. I painted for the first part of my life and the third part of my life. The in-between part was all that business I was telling you about. It was always about business and doing the shows. I had
Yeah.
two stores at the same time, you know? So I was quite busy doing the other stuff. And then after my near-death experience, I actually got back into my painting again.
But did your paintings change in any way? Did they become more crisp?
They
Uh,
came a
uh,
lot more crisp with color and vibrant color.
okay, that's what I was wondering. You know,
Unless
it's
somebody wants a muted painting, which they do now a lot,
oh
I
yeah,
do muted painting for
abstract.
people.
No,
Yeah,
no
here's one.
abstract.
Here's one on the wall. You can look at it.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
Yeah, that's just an abstract,
That's
muted
gorgeous.
impressionist.
Beautiful. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. You know, when you had mentioned that you were taken back to like the Korean War and World War II.
Yeah,
Right
that
away,
was
that came to me that you had a second, that was from another life that you had. You were experiencing from another life. But why did they
right.
go forward? They showed you that part, but they didn't show you any more of one of your past lives.
No, they didn't show me anymore. I started at that war, and I'm not sure if it was the Korean War or the World War II, one or the other. And I think the reason they might have brought me back, it's either because of my family was in that war
Uh-huh.
or I was in that, you
Oh,
know?
yes, that's
But
what I'm saying.
they didn't show me as a person like fighting the war itself. I
No,
just watched it.
that's strange that they did
But
that.
there was a reason why I was there. So I always thought that, yes, it might have been one of my past
Yeah.
lives.
Uh, did you see any of your animals by any chance?
No, I didn't. And I
Okay.
would love to. I would have loved to see my animals because I love animals.
And
I love my pet.
oh God. But and I had seen I saw somewhere else where this lady had or this man had near death experiences and saw all his animals. Saw all
Oh,
his
yeah.
animals.
I
I wonder
believe
why
that.
you
I believe
didn't.
you probably could.
I think everybody seems to have a different near death experience. They all seem to go through
Uh,
the tunnel though. Well, I don't know
yeah.
why, but they all seem to go through the tunnel and then different things happen to all these people. It's not the same.
Yeah, I know. Well, a lot of them actually, a lot of them don't go through the tunnel. They stop at the a lot. Sometimes they stop when they're above the body, hovering. Because when they're in the hospital getting
Yeah.
operated on, and your heart stops, and they start it right back up again. So you jump back in. Like I had a friend. I'll give you an example. I had a friend that died he had a pickup truck, and it was years ago before people used to wear seatbelts all the time.
Yeah.
And he hit his head on the windshield. And what happened is his spirit jumped, and he was sitting alongside himself in the truck, looking at himself, just hanging over the steering wheel.
Uh-huh.
And the paramedics came, they pulled him out. He watched the whole thing from above. Now he was above them watching the paramedics work on him. As soon as they hit him with the defibrillator on the third time, he bounced right back in the body.
But that's a different kind of experience, isn't it? I mean, they call it
Oh,
near death, but you went farther
it's
than
still a near death experience because he did die.
yeah,
But they brought him back right away, is what I'm trying to say. They
yeah.
have over 10,000 people a week that get brought back now around the world.
Oh,
So, but most of these times, there are people that are in the hospital and they have the technology to bring you back.
yeah.
So, what happens is there's quite a few people that's had those, quick experiences, those type of things. A
Um,
lot.
in the 60s and 70s, you didn't talk about any of this. It was, you just didn't talk about it. And my brother-in-law had a heart
Oh, I know.
attack. He had a heart attack, and we didn't find this out until after he died because he refused to tell anybody, but he did tell my sister, his wife. And
Oh,
he died, and he saw himself above, watching them work on his body, and then
oh yeah.
he came back. But you didn't talk about it then, and he would not tell anybody. He wouldn't tell anybody except for her, which is, I mean, that's what they did in those days. You didn't talk about that kind of
You
stuff.
didn't talk about anything.
No, another thing
Nobody
is,
talked about it.
which
I
is,
was afraid in the 90s. I was afraid because I'll be honest with you. I've never, in 1994, I've never heard of a near death experience, let alone, I never even heard the words of near death experience. So I speak to people today, they never heard the words near death experience. They don't know what it is.
well, there's somebody in chat room that never heard of it.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. By now, people are starting to get, there's millions and millions of people out there that are aware now, which is wonderful. And there is another side, and it's beautiful. And like I said before, I do gonna miss my pasta, but
Oh my God.
It, it's so overwhelming, the difference. Let me put it this way to you.
What?
I begged and pleaded not to come back here.
That's what people, they all do. They
Yeah,
all do the same thing. They don't, it's so beautiful, they don't want to come back.
no.
Okay, what else I find really amazing and so that you saw 911. This was in 1994 and you were
Yeah,
shown 911.
yeah.
How do
And
you
when it
explain
actually
that?
happened, then I realized this thing was real, real.
I know. I mean, how do you explain something like that in 1994? How do you explain that? And another thing is,
I
when
they not
you,
even showed me 911. They showed me now. They showed me things that's happened this year. I seen along the way. I mean, to that point, remember I said it's these times today?
yeah,
I seen the things that happened now that's 30 years ago. 30 years ago.
I know. That's crazy. Can you say like what they
And
were?
my book, I talk about oh my gosh, I talk about the machines. Take my first book, I talk about the machines taking over, like the robotics.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This is back in 2000 when I wrote that book. I talk about them, you know, crazy.
It is. It's amazing.
2002, I wrote that book.
Okay, when you were talking, this came to my mind when you were talking about, and I had heard you in other shows talk about this, um, Mad Max. Okay,
Yeah.
now fighting over food, water, okay, you know what
Basic staples of life.
that's what you know what I think that was? COVID-19. The
Yeah.
epi
Well,
because when that happened here in California, we were fighting for water, for food, it was a shortage of food,
I
toiletries,
know.
alcohol, cleaning products. Every there was you were lucky if you get any of that. I'm thinking that's what that was. COVID-19.
It could have been.
I truly believe that. Okay, so let me see what other do I have. Um, okay. Oh, I guess that's it. That was mostly the things I wanted to ask you when I heard your other interviews. It was your interviews is wonderful. Your story is absolutely amazing, and to have so when 911 happened, you had already seen it. Where were you when that
Yes.
happened? Where
Yes.
were you?
I was I was actually I was actually in Pennsylvania. I live in Florida, but I was up at my mother-in-law's house. And on the day of 911, my wife and I was scheduled to go downtown Manhattan. So we're getting ready to go downtown Manhattan, and my mother-in-law yells from downstairs because she's got the TV on. And we were upstairs getting ready. We ran downstairs, and we were gonna be right there in
Oh,
2 hours. There's a 2 hour drive to Manhattan from our house.
oh,
I live up in the Poconos.
oh God, beautiful. Oh
Yeah.
my God. When you uh, were shown 911, and were you aware that it was the Twin Towers?
Well, remember what I said at first. I wasn't exactly aware of what it was. I knew it was in New York and
Oh,
burning
okay.
fire and smoke and everything, because I wasn't exactly sure at that moment during the near death experience. But and I said I thought it might be. Then I said my friends are in that building. All of a sudden, I had a feeling that my friends were in that building. So that's when I figured I thought it would be 911.
That was unbelievable. What a story, Bill. Thanks so much for sharing your story with us. I'm so happy.
Oh,
And I'm glad I got to figure out Zoom.
yeah, you got the Zoom down
Yeah,
now.
we got it.
You'll probably use the Zoom only from now on
Never,
because
never.
it's never.
No. Oh, thank you so much, and God bless
Oh,
you, and good luck with all your endeavors with your book and your
you're welcome. Is
experience.
it
And
all right if I give my information
oh,
on here?
yes, yes.
Okay, so in other words, again, my book, The Ninth Level of Enlightenment, The Wisdom of the Light. There's an ambulance on the cover. My name's on the bottom. My Gmail, if anybody wants to contact me, is Bill, Bill, Tortorella, Tortorella, at gmail.com. And that's my email. And then my website is same name, BillTortorella.com. Real simple. So that's my website for my books, BillTortorella.com.
I've been showing your book, and they can buy it on Amazon. And underneath this video is all that information. So if they go
Oh,
underneath
good.
it,
Thank
yeah,
you.
it's all there, honey. Now, one more
I didn't know.
question. This Adam Farrell, he says, ask Bill, what happens to people who reject the tunnel of light? Do you know anything about
Well,
that?
for me, I don't know, but for me, I had no choice. It drew me right in. It was an automatic draw in. I had no choice whatsoever, Adam. Soon as that light came from behind me, it turned me and it pulled me right into the tunnel.
Just whew, right
And
in.
and soon as I got in, I felt this enormous amount of love, so I didn't want to be out. And then it just kept increasing and increasing until I got to where I say home, which is heaven in my mind. So there was no control over it. They controlled me. And the most amazing thing is the knowledge they have and the wisdom they have is so far advanced. I can't explain that part here.
Yeah,
So you can
that's
imagine using 100% of your mind. The
uh,
capabilities of our mind is supposed to be so outstanding. I got to witness some of that while I was there because I was able to understand telepathy and I was able to, you know, work with telepathy in there. It was amazing. And it's amazing when you could converse with groups of people at the same time and understand what everybody's saying. So that's why when I keep saying it was so advanced, it was so advanced, because it is. I mean, actually a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing.
wow, that's amazing. And how many people are you in contact with that have had that same experience?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I've well, we have 40 people on the show. I mean, I'm in contact with other NDEs almost a daily. I have a couple of people a day I speak to, I would say.
Wow.
So over a period of years, that's
You
hundreds
said
and hundreds and thousands, maybe.
wow. So they email you, they contact you?
They email me. Yeah, people contact me through email, usually because that's the easiest way to contact me.
You said you do a podcast?
I've done many podcasts. Well, you've seen some of my podcasts.
Oh,
I did the Coming Home podcast,
oh, okay.
the Other Side podcast.
Do you ever have guests on your shows?
Well, it's not my show; it's their show,
Oh,
like
okay.
yours. This
Oh,
is your show.
yeah.
So,
Okay.
but yeah, I might do my own podcast someday. Or right now, I'm working on the movie, and after this movie, I want to see if I could get a. I want to see if I could get because I want people to be aware
Yeah.
of what's going on, and I want people to know that they don't have to be afraid. And I would like to make this, if I can, into a feature film, if possible.
Yeah, that would be great.
So I
Well,
know all I have to do is to get it into the right producer's hand because once they read the first 49 pages, the pre-story, it's a story. I'm going to tell you, it's a story. I told you about that time I was in Bangkok.
yeah.
Should have been dead. I was beaten with machine guns.
Oh my.
I mean, And there's no reason for me not to be dead,
Wow.
but for a miracle.
Well, I hope they
And
do
there's
make a
several
movie.
other things that happened that was so uncanny, but unbelievable.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's so interesting leading up into and it shows, you know what the beauty about it?
What?
It shows you how they connected and saved me in my life, in my life experience on the other side, my review. It shows how they connected and stepped in to help me. In one of the cases, it showed how they took a knife from my neck, how they took it away.
Uh,
And the guy just pushed me and said, "Don't come here again." That's when
wow.
I was a teenager. I was in the wrong neighborhood in Brooklyn. And this gang came up on me and somebody put a long blade across
Oh
my throat
my God.
and was digging and cut me. And, you know, when that's happening to you, you have a fear of this is before my near death experience. So I had a fear of dying. And, but I seen him. He's like he was almost struggling. And I don't know why, but they showed me that in my near death experience in my life review.
Oh my God.
So
That
that's why it's so important. If people could get to read the book, they'll understand this. How that's the best part.
that's oh my God. What
Yeah, some of
Bill?
them stories are unbelievable. It's crazy.
Well,
But I
what
have the
you
pictures of I have the pictures of this guide in Thailand, this little girl, 4 foot and nothing high, standing up to these whatever they were. I don't know what they were. They were trying to act like military people, but on the wrong side. I don't know what they were. All I know is that she took over and she saved us somehow.
wow.
She got us out of there. She told them, screaming at them in Thai, "I work for the Thai government, blah, 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 blah. You
Wow.
people are wrong doing this, all this stuff." I don't know if they got afraid or what, because if she was missing, maybe they would have come after her. What I found out there is that they would have probably, because I know manufacturers over in Thailand that make my jewelry I was selling from there. And they told me, yeah, that's what they do. You hear that once in a while here. Then they find the person in a ditch somewhere 2 weeks later.
Oh man.
So that's
Oh.
exactly what happened.
Oh God. Well, Bill, it was such a pleasure, and it was so nice to meet you. Thank you so much.
Nice meeting you. Remember,
Thank
we
you.
all have angels around us.
Okay, honey, I will. Remember that, viewers. Okay, thank you so much, Bill. Good night,
All
and
right.
best wishes to you and everything that you do. Thank you so much. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good night.
Good
Thank
night.
you. Oh God. Oh, I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Wasn't he amazing? It was so nice. Um, that should end that. It should have stopped. Hold on, why is this going? Okay, so I hope you enjoyed the show, everybody. What an amazing guest. Um, he's he's an Italian. I love him. He's from New York. Anybody, so you can buy his book. It's on, you can buy it on Amazon. And I really enjoyed having him on the show, and um, loved his story. And I wish him so much luck, and I hope they do make a movie out of his story. It's amazing, and it's so crazy things that he saw. 911, and I know that Mad Max was COVID. It has all the earmarks of what was happening to us at COVID. It was a horrible time of our life. It was horrible. Some of my family members, I used to get extra toilet paper because they couldn't get it. They couldn't get cleaning products. They couldn't get anything. It was terrible, and let alone food. And oh my God, and napkins and Kleenex. And I'll never forget that as long as I live. It was a horrible, horrible time of our life. Horrible. So anyway, and let's see. Naturally I don't have my calendar. Okay, so in 2 weeks we're doing airing a show with Serenity Jenny, and it's on this fella Christian Tompkin. He um he disappeared. He was working on a field, and his worker was behind him, but they were carrying on a conversation. And then all of a sudden, the one worker was talking to him and had asked him a question, and Christian stopped talking. So he turned around and poof, he was gone. They found one of his shoes wrapped around the fence, that iron fence that has those little like pricklies on them, and they found a piece of his blue shirt, just a piece of it, hanging off the fence. It's a creepy story, and hopefully Jenny will be able to tell us what happened. Um, I have other shows coming up, and I'm sorry, I keep forgetting the calendar. Do I have it anywhere? Let me see. Oh. Let me see. Oh, is this it? Okay, so that's that. Oh, good. It fell apart. August. Oh, my calendar fell apart. I better figure out where this is. Anyway, after that, I think it's August 8th is Trey Hudson. Um, I think he's the one that has Project Meadow. There's a meadows. It's part, they call it Skinwalker, but it's a meadow, and they found it by accident, and it's freaky. It's just like the Skinwalker Ranch. There's all kinds of stuff that goes on. And then on the 22nd, I have a returning guest. I had him a long time ago, Dr. Bruce Olive Solheim, and he was an abductee, and it's really strange because his abduction was actually a reunion with the aliens that took him. He had been abducted years ago and he didn't know about it. And he says, and he's written a book, couple of books, and I'm going to have him talk to us about. He says we're all aliens. That's what he says. So we'll find out what that's all about. And then September, I have a Brian Tyra. He had a, I found him on YouTube. He has the most amazing Bigfoot encounter. It is so scary. I couldn't believe it. And I found him on Facebook and I got a hold of him. So he's going to come on the show. And I have other ones. I don't have it written down. Um, Oh, and then don't forget, October, Steve is coming back. Steve Stockton. He's going to do celebrity deaths. I'm really excited about that one as well. Anyway, so I'm going to go. You guys have a great weekend, and thank you so much for joining me. I love seeing you. Oh, I guess I better do shout outs, huh? Oh gosh, and thank you to my mods, Renee and Chipateri. I love you girls. Thank you so much for always being here. And Tallcross from Scotland, who is up. I'm sorry that I went back to the regular time. Tallcross, he's poor guy is. I think it's like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning there. Thank you for always being here. Let me go back and see who's still left in the chat room. Uh, let's see. I know I saw Chris. Oh gosh. Oh, and let me see if I can pick up some. Of course, Renee Tallcross, Maria H. I am Alpha. Hello. Um, and Chipeteri, Andrew and the Gnomes Trucking Express. Let's see. Oh, Drew Beeson was in tonight. That was nice to see you. Let's see who else was here tonight. Um, oh, Christopher Chris. Yes, nice to see you. You know, I have, I have a website, and I try to send out emails. I'm gonna try and do that again, and they wouldn't let me. I tried 5 times, and they declined me sending out um, the advertisement for tonight's show. They wouldn't let me do it. And I got to find out what's going on because I pay. Excuse me. I pay to to do email, so I don't know what's going on. Um, oh, Lee Rolfe was in for a short time. You know Lee Rolfe. He's the one that did that serial killer family in the West. He was my guest. Sheila Pelican, um, Lisa Scarrett. Let's see. Uh, Crystal Triplet was in. It was nice to see Crystal. Gosh. Uh, let's see. Karen Piotti, The Phantom. The Phantom cracks me up. Nancy Santa Maria Latica. Who else? Anybody else? Guys crack me up. Anybody else still in here? You know, oh, Kim Walter. Paul Cro- Anybody else that's still in here? I know there's 28 people still watching. Um, I can't see any new, but I know watching. Oh, Adam Farrell. Anybody else? And oh, Mark Burchett. Burchetti. Hi, haven't seen you. Oh, Lynn Bowling was in tonight. Anybody else? Boy, this was a long show, huh? Almost 2 hours. I was going to tell you a ghost story, but we've been on for 2 hours. Okay, I guess that's it. Okay, guys. Good night, everybody. Have a great weekend. I'll see you in a couple, 2 weeks, I guess. And I can't wait to find out what happened to that kid. It's really, really a strange one. Um, oh yeah. Yeah, it did make up for the last show. The fast exit. I've never experienced that in my whole life. And all the times I've been doing shows, I've never had anybody do that. It's so crazy. Oh God. All right, everybody. Love you guys. Group hug, and I'll see you. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Okay. Night, everybody. Love you. Phantom. We've been on the show for 2 hours. Um, I was thinking about this near-death experience, and I know I've told my story before. Um, I don't know if you want to hear it again. Maybe some. I know Chippa and Renee have heard it, and I think Tallcross may have heard it. Um, now um, I read. Okay, so here was my notes. Okay, I didn't want. I read that I was on this near death experience LLC website, and they said that near death experience. Hold on, let me get rid of near death experience. Is usually during a close brush with death due to severe illness or injury or during some other extreme circumstances. And that was posted May 27th, 2024. So they said you don't have to actually have a no heartbeat to have a near death experience. And so I'll tell this to you again if I don't know if any, I guess you want to hear it. Okay, so when we were I have a twin sister. So when we were gosh, every year Russian River was a big deal. You know, I was from Philadelphia, but we came out to San Francisco, and 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 where we moved to was amazing. One time I have to tell you the story where we're living. So we when we were young, we moved to San Francisco. So the big deal in those days was the Russian River, Gurneyville. The place was amazing. All the big trees and it was all redwoods. That's still one of my favorite places to go. And so we went every year. Every year we went to vacation there. So this one particular year, for the second time, my family had rented this big, huge house. You had to cross the bridge, and right there as soon as you cross the bridge, was this huge house. It had like 4 levels to it, and it had a big like ballroom with a big, huge fireplace, and the kitchen was amazing. This big, huge old-fashioned kitchen, huge dining room, and then there was a room off to the side, all windows, and it was all wood. And then you walk down and they had showers. I mean, they had showers, outdoor showers, and they had a pier, and they had a rowboat that we could use. But uh, okay, so and we used to go to the beach all the time. But for somehow, I can't remember how we met up with this group of kids and how we found the location that we went to. Um, but I don't know if we took the rowboat and we saw these kids. I don't know. We met these kids. There was like 8 of them, I think, boys and girls, and it was a group of them. And we found this area that was like secluded, um, and it just had a little beach, and you had to walk down into it, and it was secluded, and there was a bridge, and it went from one side of the river to the other side of the river, and this bridge, it had 2 levels. This level here, water was higher than this level, and so underneath the bridge the water would go down to this level, and and they said there was a big sign, do not jump off this bridge. And what, all of us, they knew about it, so we just walked over to the bridge, and we were all taking turns jumping off this level of the bridge to go into the waterfall into that level. Do you guys understand that? So uh we all were taking turns, and I had done it several times, and I wasn't afraid. I just went over to the, what do you call, and went down into the river. But I think it was about the third time I went. I took my turn jumping off the bridge and going into the waterfall. But this time I couldn't get back up. And I don't know what happened. I was down there in the water, and I tried to get back up, and the water was going and going, and I was trying to get back up, and I couldn't get back up. And I tried like crazy, and I thought to myself, well, I guess this is how I'm gonna die. And I had done this for a while, and the crazy thing about this, I was not gasping for breath. There was no problem with me breathing. I didn't even, it was like I could breathe underwater. It was the weirdest thing. And so I'm doing this, trying to get up, and then I see this bright light under the water and a voice. It was a female voice. And she said to me, stop what you're doing. Put your hands to the side of your body and you will float up to the top. And so I did exactly what that voice told me. And sure enough, I floated up to the top and I was not out of breath. I wasn't, it was like I had no problem breathing. It was like I would just come up out of the water like normal. And I swam over to the side, to the bank, and all the kids were standing onto the side and they go, oh my God, we thought you were dead. We thought you drowned. Because I don't know how long I was under the water. And and so that voice saved my life. You know, another time is we um we lived we moved several times, and we moved into this area called Westlake. I was like, I know I have guardian angels, but I never really paid any attention. And we used to ride our bike, we used to explore. My sister and I were explorers. We used to we would take our bikes and we would go all over. And this area that we had moved to was called Westlake. It was a area that was building up with brand new homes, and they had a lot of there was a lot of land that was not developed. Excuse me, and they were building off of this one area, but down a ways, if you rode our bike down a ways, there was still this land that was still untouched. And we had explored this area and this we found these stables. There it was a big stables, maybe 5 or 6 stables on each end, and but there were no horses. And if you walked a little bit farther outside of the stables, there was like an embankment, and you had to go down, and you could see there was old cottages. If you went down the embankment, and then there was the little hill, but from the horse stables, you could see these cottages. There was like maybe 6 on each side, and there was a like a trail in between, so you could get to either cottage on each side. So one day, I was there all by myself, and I was exploring, and but I was in by the stables, and all of a sudden I heard a bunch of these guys coming, and I was by myself, and geez, I think I was 13 years old, and I got scared, and something told me, go hide in the stable. Hide yourself in that stable. So I got into the stable, and there was hay, and I got under the hay and I covered myself so they couldn't find me. And so they had walked through the stables, but they didn't check each individual stable. But I heard them go through, and I was hoping that I would be safe, even though nothing in those days really happened, but for some reason, something told me to hide. And so when they left, um, I got up and I got out. And so I started walking down out of the stables, down to the little embankment, going toward those going, and it was getting late by then, and going toward those cabins. And so I started heading up toward the cabin, and the first cabin that I came to, because I wanted to look inside all these cabins, there was a face. There was a face looking at me from the window, but nobody was there. The place was abandoned. So I hightailed it out of there. I got scared to death. And so it was getting late and the fog was starting to come in. And when I started walking out to get to my bike, across the if you turned this area that I was at, there was a huge ravine. There must have been like 100 feet down, and I okay this okay. So I saw the pipe that was going from one side to the to this where I was to the other side, and I wanted to go to that other side. And it must have been, God, I don't know, maybe 100 feet long, this pipe that was maybe 24 inches wide. But I wanted to go over there. And I looked at it and I looked down and I could see it was, God, it was maybe 200 feet down. But I wanted to do it. I wanted to do it. And I thought to myself, well, should I stand up and walk across this pipe? Or should I just like scoot on this pipe and go across? I don't know what I was going to do when I got to the other side. So I got to the beginning of the pipe and I thought twice and I looked and I said, well, I don't know if I'd be able to walk across the pipe that length and not fall down. I wasn't afraid. I was not afraid of death. And and I thought, well, maybe I just ought to scoot. So I got on the pipe and I started scooting out, heading toward the middle of of that pipe going over. And I got maybe 15 feet out, and a voice came to me and said, "Stop what you're doing. Go slowly back where you came from and get off that pipe." And so I did. I scooted backwards and I uh, I scooted backwards and got off. Now, this particular day, it was getting late. I should have been going home, and the fog was starting to come in. And across the way was this hill, and the fog was starting to come over the hill, and I looked up on that hill, and so God as my witness, I'm telling you the honest to God truth. When I looked up on that I never went back, mind you. When I looked up on that hill, I there was a thing, the scariest thing I had ever seen in my whole life, except for the monster, except for the thing was in my house. It was huge. It had to have been huge because I could see it as plain as day. The fog was going past it, but when the clouds cleared off of this thing, it was kept doing that. The thing was huge. It was black and it had like a cape on it. I swear to God, it had a broomstick. To me, it looked like it had a broomstick. And I could tell it was looking at me. I was never so scared in all my life. I stood there and looked at it because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And I had to go because I had to go. It was getting late and anyway, I was scared. So I got on my bike and hightailed it home and I never went back to that place again, ever. So that was just a story I wanted to tell. I have a lot more, but it's getting late. Okay, guys. So I love you, and I will see you in 2 weeks. Okay, I love you guys. Have a great weekend. Be safe out there. I love you, and I'll see you. And group hug to everybody. Love you. Thank you. Good night. Thank you.